Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Hardfire TV. My name is Cameron Weber. I'm the producer and host of Hardfire, and I'm an economist and historian. Thank you for watching Hardfire on Brooklyn Free Speech Media. Today we will be discussing public education in New York City. This will be our May 2023 program. To help discuss this topic, I welcome back to the show Matthew Morgan and Erik Frankel. Maybe so Matthew, we live in we're pretty much neighbors in the Sunset Park area, and you live in
Northwest Brooklyn. We all live in.
Yeah, Northwest is I thought it was South Brooklyn. Sunset Park is South Brooklyn. Yeah. Erik Frankel, what do you think?
They call it South Slope now. At least that's what they're building call us.
Right. And, well, they're building lots of schools in our neighborhood, that's for sure. Yeah. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We've been holding a number of programs about social services in New York City, about how perhaps social services, well, we recently did a show available on YouTube about social services. We talked about how the state likes to see a certain amount of homelessness and crime and mental health problems and poverty because this keeps the city and politicians in the business of solving these problems. In other words, the two-party state doesn't want to solve these problems, only to keep funneling money to the special interests who support them politically with dollars and votes. They only pretend to solve the social problems. The public schooling system is, of course, New York City's largest social service. We spend almost $40,000 per student, the highest in the country. The average in the country is $13,000 we're spending. I know New York is twice as expensive everywhere else, but our schooling costs 3 times as much as we live in. But we're only 25th in the country in terms of educational achievement. Public school enrollment has dropped 10% since the COVID era, yet we keep shoveling more money into these schools and building schools. Yet the federal government has given New York City schools around $7 billion in politically based spending. We know that teachers' unions are big campaign donors and sources of get out the vote for the statist agenda. Okay, with that as an introduction, I'd like to hear from our guests. What do you think is wrong with New York City public schools? And more importantly, what do you think should be done about it? Who wants to go first?
Please.
Yeah, I mean, this from the public schools are just kind of a reflection of every other social service in New York City. The money's not going to the money that is being spent isn't going to the people. Same thing with homelessness, same thing with the subways. It's going to
the administrators. And the bureaucracy.
And the bureaucracy, right. So
and the teachers union.
Correct. And I mean also with, any public service, when they see something that's not doing as well as they want it to, instead of trying to replicate areas where hey, why is this school doing so well?
Oh, right.
They say, just throw more money at it.
Yeah, that's always, if it's not working, just throw more money at it.
Exactly.
That's the status.
Right. This has to be the
solution for everything.
Right.
Just throw more money at it.
So I think it's just a lack of oversight,
Well, I think it's not, as an economist, I think it's because there's no competition.
Right.
And it all just creates a single agenda, a single educational program, no individual creativity.
Right.
Teaching to the test and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a quote: "The economy demands creativity. The school system demands conformity." This is from Carrie McDonald. Carrie McDonald, I don't know if you ever read the Foundation for Economic Education.
Oh yeah,
the Foundation for Economic Education.org is a very good one. That's a quote from her. So the economy demands creativity, yet the school system demands conformity. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. When it comes to schooling, like you were saying, competition. I mean, I have nothing personally against public schools. I went to public schools,
I do
but
too.
when
A
it,
lot of them.
Yeah, but people wear that as a badge of honor. It's like, I went to public school.
right,
It's like, yeah, but you're retarded. No, but it's like, I know a lot of people are leaving Brooklyn for New Jersey because the schools are better.
right,
A lot
Well,
of
the truancy, recent data is the truancy rate in New York City public schools is 30 to 40%.
Hmm.
The truancy rate, in other words, the percentage of students who are supposed to be in school is
Mm.
only 60 to 70% are
Right.
showing up.
Yeah.
So how would that for supply and demand? If
right.
if school was creative and interesting and engaging, you wouldn't have such a high truancy rate.
Well, that's also a reflection of deeper socioeconomic issues, like, parents who maybe, single parents working two jobs who aren't around to make sure that their
Yeah.
kids are going to school or that their kids are doing their homework, and some,
Because parents aren't engaged in public schooling like they would be if they had to help choose their schools.
right,
Eric, you've had a child in a public school.
Yeah,
right?
at pre-K, it was supposed to be free, but I still had to pay.
It was
They
a
said I
public
made too
school.
much money, but I said it all goes to taxes, but it didn't really matter. But yeah, so it was, I said when you drop off your kid in public school, here it was like Mission Impossible. You go, you extract, you drop them off, and when you pick them up, you extract them.
Right. It's like a
No,
military
yeah,
operation.
I sent my son to school overseas where after school, all the parents and teachers for an hour are allowed in the courtyard, and you see how your kids interact with the other kids and the teachers.
Well, that's what public schools.
Yeah, but no,
I mean, private schools
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
United States do
Yeah.
that.
they said we don't have a real sense of community here because most people, it's renting. They're renters. Oh,
Right,
yeah. So
right.
without home ownership, it's hard to have a real community.
Right.
Because most people have their foot out the door or vote against the interest of the community. So for
You've
cheap
lived in
rent.
Sunset. Your family's lived in this neighborhood
Yeah.
for quite some time, so you've seen the changes.
Yeah. But my father used to go to a school across the street from us, Dewey, and he was in the
Right.
advanced program. And then he transferred to Madison.
Uh-huh.
And the same day, he said he went to the remedial program. Because over here, they were all immigrants, but from Ireland and Italy. Over there, there were a lot of Jewish doctors. And their kids went to, education was very important.
It should be decentralized with choice, I think,
right,
to get the parents engaged and to improve the quality.
right. I mean, one thing is, as I got older, I felt that I realized things about my learning style that worked for me, and it made me realize that people learn in different ways, and if you only give them one option for a type of school, then
It just becomes conformity.
right.
It's
So like you have to learn this way, but it's like, but I'm a visual learner, but like in this class,
Yeah, but is not this conformity and this precision and public institutions like that, isn't that the intent? Is to have a workforce
Yes.
and to have ready people for the military.
Right.
I said they're very effective.
Yeah.
And not teaching about money.
Corporatism is what it is.
Problem solving.
Right.
History.
It just reiterates the status quo elite who, or the ruling class, you can call them. The social institutions, I think, like public schools, like museums,
right,
even parks sometimes help reinforce the ruling class. Schools especially. Okay, the reason so I'm looking for evidence. We have one, Erik did not like New York public schooling for his child. Okay, the reason
Well, for any child. No,
did you speak to other fans? Yeah.
Oh
right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So they're terrified of what the kids are learning, of the teachers' capacity to handle, I guess, because of their stress.
Did you have a choice to take your son into a charter school?
No, this was pre-K, so
So
it
no
was
such
free
thing.
for the city, but when you talk to the parents, and a lot of them are first generation immigrants, they're
Right.
just like, this is terrible.
Future of our country.
Right.
This is immigration. The reason I know that New York City public schools are failing is because there is such a strong reaction on behalf of public school labor unions against school choice, against allowing competition. Well, the reason for that is because the alternative schools wouldn't have to use labor union teachers.
Right.
Yeah,
So that
the narrative that charter schools are anti-union is quite rampant.
In other words, we know that because traditional historic public school unions are against school choice and competition, that something must be wrong with the public schools.
Right.
If not, why they wouldn't be lobbying so hard against the competition.
Right.
But there is a lot of talk in the community, especially within the Asian community, about doing away with standardized testing.
Right.
Because they feel that schools need accountability. But then the question is, what are they? Who monitors, the tests? Who's testing the tests?
Well, yeah, that great. That's a segue into, you must have read the script. No, okay. We have discussed the issue of standardized testing in public school in the past on our side. And this should be a non-issue. If there were competition in schools, the parents, students, and schools would be free to select the best fit for their aspirations and needs. Those who would want the traditional labor union standardized public schools would be free to have this choice as well. The only way to test the quality of something is the market test. Allow choice and see what develops through supply and demand. In New York City, the market test shows clearly that public schools are failing because of the truancy rates are 30 to 40%,
And everything's so much more expensive, and the results are
the results are so much worse. And the current, so a little bit on New York politics. The current, everyone all right? It's pretty good.
Good.
Right. So back to New York. Well, let's talk about New York State politics regarding schools. So you have the current governor, I believe, is for school choice. And the big problem in New York City is that the state puts limits on how many charter schools you can have.
Right.
Limiting choice because the labor unions are lobbying so hard to prevent that from happening. So her original budget proposal was to have 100 charter school licenses in New York City, and she only got 12 of them. And that they have any budget to show. She only got 12. And I remember, since I've been studying this stuff, that's about all they've been allowing the whole time.
Sounds like them with the marijuana licenses.
Oh, well, there's been, against that standardized stuff, there's been lots of charter schools or bodegas doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
due to competition.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But nobody's sending their kids to off-brand schools without licenses.
Well,
But they're, you can homeschool.
Oh, well, yeah, well, homeschooling is also
It's a
10% increase in the United
And
States.
it's also, at least where we are in Brooklyn, you really need 2 household incomes.
Right.
So it's hard to homeschool.
Right.
But imagine if we were funding the parents to homeschool and then testing them to see whether or not they're learning.
Right.
But you don't, I guess you often get unions to vote against the interest of the community so that they could get work.
Right.
Which I get, but
back to that testing thing. It used to be that when the school choice, maybe 10 years ago, first wave of it, that the results didn't prove that alternative schooling were better than public school. But that now, recently, in the last couple of years, with the return of this idea, especially with COVID lockdowns, that more people are interested in alternative means for education, be it homeschooling, be it charter schools, but you have the special interests who don't allow alternatives in schooling.
and also now you have a lot of
New York City
family
is worse
homes
than
who cannot take off from work. I guess so.
Even if they're working
Yeah.
from home, it's not like they can.
Well, the reason is because taxes are so high in New York City. That's why prices are so high in New York City. And that can only explain just a little bit of why New York City schools are so expensive.
Right.
So
One thing I hear a lot of is like it's a common, like, you bring up how bad public schools are. People will say, like, well, that's because the money isn't going to it. It's going, like in states that do have charter schools, it's like the money is going there. And and it's taking money away from the public schools. That's why they're doing so poorly. And it's just like,
Well, it's
I
not
mean, we
taking
don't have
it
a lot of
away.
people
It's
with
still
special
most
needs
expensive.
children in this area.
Well, no, it'd be the same amount
And
of
they're
money.
told that charter schools will take money out of your school and your kids won't be able to get the education that they require, and they're terrified. They
right,
scare them into
Well,
thinking that charter schools are bad.
No,
Right.
it wouldn't be a budget effect because the net amount spent would be the same. It just would be distributed differently
Right.
between public schools and labor unions. I mean,
Yeah.
labor unit schools and alternative schools.
Right. But I think that any dollar that goes towards a charter school is,
Uh-huh.
even if a whole student goes, you know, like, that it's going to drastically decrease the ability of
The only
the
thing,
public school.
they're all public schools because they're all paid for by public
Right.
money. So it's to say that it decreased public schooling is not true because even alternative schools are
Right.
public schools paid for by the taxpayer.
Right.
Yeah, but it seems like almost every occupation now in Sunset Park is somehow paid for by government.
Oh,
It's amazing. I mean, the construction projects,
Sure, sure.
the
Corporate
schools,
cronyism. Our labor unions.
Yeah.
Well, that's a requirement. But I would like to point out some of the hypocrisy and mendacity involved in the politics of public schools. The first idea is the elitism of experts, which we might define as do what I say and not what I do. Okay. So I'm going to put up a graphic which shows the person who's head of one of the major teachers unions.
Sends their kids to a private school.
No, has their own. Well, of course, but no, they had their own charter school. So the head of the labor union co-founded a charter school, and so that charter school was given increased public school space for their particular school, while the head of the union is actively engaged in limiting public resources for the competitor charter schools. I guess that's really fun. This is
That's a
blatant.
great idea.
This is blatant economic rent seeking.
Yeah.
After COVID, there are now more than 100,000 empty seats in New York public schools.
Oh, wow.
And so those would be easy to fill with competition in charter schools,
Right.
would be allowing spaces.
Even though the funding for schools is going up.
It is going up per person.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Less people, more money.
Oh, well, that's easy money. You know, you get
Right.
7 billion in free federal money. And
Right.
it just raises prices.
Well, like when Brad Lander said in his first 100 days, he would show where all the money went for the federal government that they gave during COVID.
Oh,
So you go to this, you go to the
30%
site.
fraud. It's all fraud.
Well, you go to the site and it shows you like the most vague thing ever. Just like it went to the Department of Education. I was just like, okay, like where though? And it's just like that's it. That's all we're gonna tell you. Like, in interest of transparency, we're gonna tell you, but this is all we're gonna tell you. Just like
Right, I was interested into seeing how much New York City subsidized filmmaking for rich Hollywood producers.
oh yeah,
And I couldn't find any statistics
Mm.
about that. I mean, nothing pertinent. Oh, okay, last new idea here. One of the things we hear today is follow the science, which has come to mean follow the government data and then the government program. At the beginning of the show, we mentioned that according to U.S. News and World Report, New York public schools cost the most per student in the USA. Well, however, can you really trust the state's data? And I'm going to put up a graphic here. The New York Post finds that the New York Post, by the way, is Republican. I'm not a Republican, but New York Post does what a newspaper should, which is criticize the state.
Right.
Post finds that New York City only reports the passing grades of those in public schools who take the exams and excludes those who don't sit for the exams. For example, here in Sunset Park, the state reports that 96% of students rated proficient in math. However, more than 55% of the students didn't take the exam.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you combine those, then
wow.
Maybe they would have aced it.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the smart ones.
Yeah.
Take home.
right, they're getting their own education.
Right.
They're voting with your feet. That's what
Right.
that's. All right. So we have just 1 minute left. I would like to thank my guests, Matthew Morgan, Erik Frankel, for another excellent discussion on current events and political economy. I hope that we have given our viewers some new ideas about the challenges facing our New York City. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any last words for our viewers?
I would just say that issues like school are awful. Like I just remember being a kid and hearing adults fight, and as a kid you don't care. So like these adults really need to just realize like to get out of their heads and stop fighting and like just really think about like what's the best for kids. Stop trying to drum up all this paranoia and just be like,
Fighting over politics.
right, just like do what's best, even if it like I know, like even if it means you're wrong, which is hard, but
Minimize politics in your life.
right. And in schools, like kids just
Well, that's where it starts.
like school is hard enough. Growing up is hard enough. Like there's so much crap going on in your life, and it's hard growing up that like last thing they need is like to be politicized and all this other stuff. Just, like,
Brainwashed?
let kids be. They're gonna be all right, but just like give them the tools and let them be.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for watching Hardfire TV on Brooklyn Free Speech Media. We have more than 60 shows on our YouTube channel. Just search for Hardfire and Brooklyn Free Speech. See you next time.